On this episode of the Procedurally Generated Show, Ethan and I rank our favorite controllers of all time. Howdy everybody, welcome to the Procedurally Generated Show. I'm your host Tony, and joining me this week, I've got Ethan.
Hey Tony.
What's up?
Not much, how are you doing?
Oh, doing pretty good. We finished Gears of War. Finally, it's been a while.
It really has.
It took us a long time to finish Gears of War.
I do have some words of thoughts.
Okay.
Not on Gears of War.
Okay.
So, what if there was a mod of Pokemon? And I know there's a lot of mods.
Yes, there are.
But this mod is to make the original Kanto region Greendale Community College, the campus, the entire campus. And you play as a student there, and you have to beat the Greendale 7 and Chang. And then, you know, kind of spirals into more community references here, there, and everywhere.
That is a game I think you would really like.
I really should look into making that a thing. It would be really hard to do, but it's doable.
It would probably be very hard to do.
I bet if I send that information to the right people in the community.
Somebody could make it happen.
I bet it would happen like within a week. Like there would be a prototype out.
Okay. You need to find the right people then and make that happen.
Anyway, that's just your weekly community reference on the show now.
That's going to be our new Bullet Witch. Is that what you're saying?
I'm going to probably keep doing it until the movie comes out.
Okay. Well, they haven't started filming a movie yet, so you could be making these references for a while.
I'm all right with that.
Well, Cole is out this week, so you and I decided we're just going to have a little fun and mix things up a little bit. And we're just going to rank our favorite video game controllers of all time.
It's been a long time coming.
We thought, why not just have a little bit of fun? I played a little bit of Ratchet and Clank this week. I've been streaming that for people on Twitch if they've been wanting to watch that on the PS5. Since I have Plus, thought I might as well take advantage of it. Play a little bit of Ratchet and Clank. Yeah. I am absolutely loving the game.
The remake of the first game?
2016, yeah.
Yeah, good game.
So I need to get Rift Apart, but I think it's $50 right now, and
it's still expensive.
I think it might have been recently on sale for $40, but
it was all right. I mean, I enjoyed what I played on there, but at the same time, it's just more Ratchet and Clank at the end of the day.
Like, I don't know if this one got any kind of optimization or upgrade for the PS5, but it is a gorgeous game.
I played both of them on PS5, and I don't think there was any optimization. It worked. Yeah, it was good. Looked great.
It's a beautiful game. I can't. It
looks good even on PS4 from the videos I've seen before.
That's one of those franchises that I think, if Sony wanted to, could turn into a kids' TV show super easy.
They turned it into a kids' movie.
Yeah, the movie was all right. I want to see a TV show of that. That is one that could have multiple seasons going on, and I think that could be a big thing for them if they ever decided.
It could have like 6 seasons in a movie.
Hey, there you go. They already got the movie out of the way. They just need the 6 seasons now.
All right, cool. Doing the reverse.
A movie and 6 seasons. So, but yeah, I figure, why not? Let's just do this. We'll do it live.
It's like any chance I get, I'm throwing a community reference out now.
And we've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 times 5 rows, so 40 controllers to go over.
Yeah, give or take.
So, and they
There
range
might
all
be
the way.
some we just throw out at this last second there. We don't know.
Actually, it may be more than that because there's I think there's 6 rows of 8 controllers each. Starting with the Atari and then working all the way up to some modern.
We're not going through that final row. We're going to go through like maybe 2 of them. That's about it. If we decide to go through those.
Okay.
At least one of them we will.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead. I'll pull that up on screen right now so people can see it, and they will be able to see us in real time, rank our favorite controllers, and probably argue about some of them.
Oh, okay. I thought they had to actually see us. I was like, I'm in my pajamas. It's late at night. No.
No, so
I'm not turning on the camera.
I'm actually going to turn my camera off, so all they see is just the controllers.
I'm wearing a G4 T-shirt, some Ninja Turtle pants.
I'm looking pretty good because I was at my wife's book signing today, and so I had to look presentable 1990
for the Ninja Turtle cartoon.
So,
yeah, your wife had a book signing. How'd that go?
It went pretty well. She met quite a few people, made some more connections in the writing community, and
nice.
Sold a few books. So that's always good. And I came home with other books because you can't go to the bookstore and not buy books. So True. I bought a couple of books while I was.
I could find a way to not buy books, but. Yeah.
I've gone to the bookstore and I haven't bought books, but my wife has bought books. So someone in the group that we were there with bought books at the bookstore. So, but here we go. Controllers, Ethan.
All right.
I have an Atari 2600 controller in my garage right now. That is the first controller on the list.
I think I have one down and to my right about 3 feet away.
This is one of the
arcade cabinets.
This is one of the first controllers I ever used. We had an Atari 2600. My brother did back when I was a kid. And that got sold or lost or whatever long ago. And then a few years ago, my wife conspired with Jesse from OVGE and got me a new 2600 and a ton of games for it. So
nice.
I love this controller. It's not a good controller by any means. I would not put this anywhere close to the top.
It functions, and that's all we can ask.
It did its job for the time in the late 70s and the early 80s. But, one button.
I wonder if the person who designed it ever looks back at it and is like, why did I do this?
Well, it made sense at the time. There wasn't a lot you needed games to do.
Right, then. But you had this controller that's supposed to look like an arcade stick, one button, and it's on a block, and you have to hold it with one hand, and it's like you have that, and then you look at what Nintendo did with their controller, and it's like, well,
why didn't I think
way
of that?
More compact and made way more sense.
The problem with the Atari 2600 controller is that it's backwards from what you would think it should be.
Yeah.
Because in the arcade, you used your left hand on the stick, and the buttons were controlled with your right hand, and this is backwards. So it felt a little unnatural if you were used to playing any kind of game in the arcade.
Yeah.
I'd probably put this
one... an easy way to invert controls at the time, either.
No, you could not. I guess you could kind of hold it upside down, but then you'd have to think upside down when you're moving.
I had an aunt that did that with the NES controller.
Really?
Yeah. Not like flipped over upside down. I'm talking like rotated.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
On an X-axis or something.
Yeah,
whatever.
I want to say there were some Atari 2600 controllers that had buttons on the other side or had multiple buttons that, both functioned as the same button so you could hold it whichever way you preferred. But the standard, just regular Atari 2600 controller was the stick with the button on the left. I'd probably put this one maybe C tier.
C? Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not a bad controller. But it's definitely not as good as many of the controllers that came after it.
No, but it was built like a rock.
That's true. It was a brick, and you could, sling that controller around.
You know what other controller you could swing around? The paddle controller.
Oh yeah, and it came with two paddles connected together, so it was like this weird bolo thing that you could throw at people and tie them up.
From a combat perspective, I would give it an A rank.
You want me to share my screen with you so we can both see the same thing, or are you just
looking at something different than I am?
Well, no, I'm just saying so that we don't have to both keep our own.
No. I mean, people can go to your channel to see yours.
Oh, that's true. You are streaming at the same time, so
yes, and we'll probably have like a different rating, but I mean, that's fine.
So, the paddle controller was used for games like one of my favorite Atari 2600 games was Night Racer. I think is what it was called, but it was a game where you played as a car in the middle, and the road was coming at you, and it would spin, slide left and right, and you had to rotate the controller to make sure your car stayed on the thing. Or there was a circus game where you played as two guys on like a seesaw, and you were bouncing each other back and forth up in the air. Again,
man, the Atari was like super simple, and why did that thing even work?
I'd put this one right alongside the Atari 2600 controller. Like it is a good controller for its time. It did its job, but it is not, a great controller.
You can play Pong with it.
You can play Pong with it, and Breakout.
Yeah.
So, but I'd probably put this
Breakout's
one
pretty good.
C tier as well.
Next up, we have the Famicom controller. The Nintendo Famicom controller.
Yes, the Japanese version of the Nintendo Entertainment System, if you will.
So I've never actually used one of these. I want to.
I have.
No, wait, actually, yeah, I have. Over at Micah's.
Yep.
I forgot about that. I think it was... Yeah, either way. Doesn't matter. But yeah, this little thing... So this is like before the before the US Nintendo controller.
Yeah.
Very bare bones. Had your A and B button. I don't know if it was like 1 and 2 or something on there. Red and gold with the blackish gray on there.
Mm-hmm.
It's attached to the game console, and the second controller had a volume slider and a microphone built into it. So we have to consider that along with this controller at the same time.
The one drawback to this controller is that cord was super short. It was maybe 3 feet long, and so you had to sit right next to the system, basically.
And now we have all these warnings on TV shows and the anime. It's like, please sit 6 feet away from your TV at least, and not in a dark or in a well lit room.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Like
but this was made for the Japanese audience, and housing even today over there is
tiny,
small, compact.
Yeah.
So you don't exactly have all that room still.
Like, this is a good controller. I like it. I think I prefer the US NES controller to the Japanese one. Because the US one felt a little sturdy. The plastic on the Japanese version of the Famicom controller is not super strong. Like, it feels squishy.
It doesn't look like it's very flush with the top to the bottom either.
No, it's not. There was a ridge that went around it as well.
Heck, I get annoyed using the NES controller just from the hard edges anyway. So I give this one props for having the rounded edges.
See, I've never had a problem with the US Nintendo controller. Those corners never bothered me.
If I try to use one today, it bothers me. Back then, I didn't care. But, I mean, in the meantime, I think I have one working dog bone controller, so I'm always happy with that.
See, I really don't like the dog bone controller.
I
don't know.
The dog bone controller is not on this list. That's a demerit.
It's not, is it? So, where would you put the Famicom controller?
I'm going to put it at B.
Okay. I kind of agree. I think a B is probably...
And again, these are our own lists together, so it's probably not going to match at the end of the day. But, I mean, it's not like we have to persuade the other person to agree with us.
That's true. I would put the NES controller at A. I like it more than the Famicom controller. And the NES controller at the time, like, revolutionized controls for home video games.
I'm going to put it at B. The NES controller. The US NES controller.
I mean,
just because, like I've already said, with the problems with for today, I just can't do it.
I'll go B as well. I can see your reasoning.
And like I said, my reasoning is my reasoning. You don't have to match me.
The next one, though, I'm putting right at the bottom. That is a piece of garbage.
From a collector standpoint, that thing is awesome. From usage standpoint,
yeah,
it worked on not like the sensors on there. It worked looking for sound, so it can't be used like in
a loud room or
or like GDQ or something.
Any place where you have a TV.
One of the major flaws of it, yes.
The Power Glove is awesome, but the Power Glove is garbage.
Yep, D rank in that right
That
away.
That is straight D all the way. That is a piece of junk. Famicom and the Super Nintendo controller, they're identical. They're the same controller. The only difference is the Japanese got the
candy
cool
buttons,
candy-colored buttons, and we got the purple ones. Both of these are fantastic controllers. Like, the addition of the shoulder buttons was nice. Gave you a little bit more control. The D-pad always felt really good. I liked the concave and the convex versions of the buttons. It's
the Super Famicom controller was not concave or convex. It was, I mean, they were rounded.
Yeah, they were
concave. They were
convex. They both stuck out.
I was like, what's the word I'm looking for?
So, but I think these are absolute A tier controllers. Those Super Famicom and the Super Nintendo controllers are some of the best controllers that have ever been made.
In fact, I had a SNES turbo controller, and it had the colored buttons on there. And that thing eventually bit the dust. I took the buttons out of that one because at a young age of being curious of taking apart stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Took apart a Super Nintendo controller and the turbo controller, and I put the candy buttons into the regular Super Nintendo controller. And I still use it to this day, so it looks like a Famicom or Super Famicom controller. It's really nice.
Very nice. The N64.
How to describe this monstrosity?
It is weird. Like, it brought home consoles into the 3D age, and it did its job. It is not comfortable to hold in any way.
And then you put the attachment stuff in the back.
The button layouts are weird.
Yep.
I think this is probably like as good a job as it did controlling the games. It is not a very good controller. There were third parties.
That joystick broke all the time. Third party versions of it break down even worse.
And third party controllers changed the layout, which improved.
Oh, the super
layout.
pads, yes. There is a super pad that is just that middle part's taken out, and it's just the joystick is moved to a location that makes sense.
Yeah,
and so everything is within both thumb reach. So
I would put the N64 controller in the D rank as like.
I'm going to put it at C rank.
I do not like the N64 controller in any way. I do actually want to.
It is a monstrosity, but it is. It functions. It works. It breaks down easily, though.
Okay.
But, I mean, you look at it and you're like, yeah, I want to play a 64 game.
Like, I want to get one for the Switch. I want one of those N64 Pro controllers just so I have one so I can play N64 games with a proper N64 controller, but I don't like that controller in any way. I can see how you would put it at a C rank, but that is just not a controller I like in any way.
Okay.
On the other hand,
Yeah,
The
this is where we're
GameCube
going to be.
controller is fantastic.
These are the two controllers that have us separated.
Really.
The 64, you have it at what, D, and I have it at C, and then on the GameCube, we're going to be different.
The GameCube controller is an S tier controller for me all day long.
Yeah, I knew you'd say yes.
All day long. Especially the Wavebird. I owned 4 Wavebirds when I had my first GameCube.
Oh, that's awesome.
And seeing those 4 Wavebird adapters plugged into the front of the console was always really nice. And it was the first wireless controller I ever had that worked. And I think it's super comfortable. The analog sticks are really nice. I like the D-pad. I know a lot of people complain about the size of the D-pad, but I really like it. I thought it was a good D-pad even though it was small, and the button layout, as weird as it looks, was, I thought, very intuitive and worked very nicely.
I'm going to put it at A rank. I know you're doing S. Only because I don't like the triggers on there. Like the Z button and the R bumper. It's got that, it's like it's like 2 buttons in one on the L and R.
Yes,
so you push it down, and then you feel it hit another thing, and you push it down even harder and feel that click. And for some reason, that would just like rub my fingers in a weird way, and really? I didn't like it.
See,
it was like rubbing on raw or something when I play Metal Gear Solid.
That's one of the things. I don't like the shape of the triggers on the GameCube controller. I think, modern triggers are much better. But the having both the analog and the digital click to those buttons was really, really nice. And it really helped with a lot of games, especially if you were playing any kind of racing game or something like that.
Yeah, it's like I understood the functionality behind it. It's just the implementation of it hurt. It physically hurt my fingers. After a while. And honestly, I think they could have done better with the face buttons, but for what it was, it A-rank.
Yeah. Okay, I can see that. I don't really have any opinion about the Donkey Konga controllers. Like, they're cool, they're neat. I don't know where I would put these. Maybe I just put them in a B.
There's like, 4, maybe 5 games that use that thing?
Yeah, they don't get used very often.
No, I think it was 3 games, wasn't it? And they're all Donkey Kong related.
I want to say there was
and 2 of the games are the same game anyway, so it's a D rank, which just throw it in.
Just put it there. Okay, but
for what it was
I never owned any.
Thing.
I always wanted to, just because I thought it was a weird, cool concept, but never got the chance.
When you're slapping that controller to All Star by Smash Mouth, you lose something. No.
Now we've got the Wii Remote, 2 different ways. Wii Remote on its side, NES style.
You say 2 different ways. There is a lot of Wiimote stuff here.
Well, okay, yeah, but the Wii. Okay, yeah, you're right. But Wii Remote on its side, like an NES, I'd probably put this at like a C.
Just consider, not like NES. Just consider it the Wiimote.
Okay.
Just consider that.
The Wii. See, I'm looking at it.
Just
they're holding it NES style, so that's different than Wii Remote Nunchuck, which is next to it.
Right.
I'm not there are some games that did a good job using this controller sideways, and it feels really comfortable in your hands most of the time. I don't like, because it's got the B button on the back in that weird spot, it sits on your hands weird.
Yeah,
and if games use that, you were accidentally hitting that B button all the time.
And it had the built-in motion control stuff too. The motion control stuff worked. It was just really awkward, especially when you had to switch it, like playing a Super Paper Mario.
Yeah, and you had to switch back.
Flip it over and point it at the screen. Then it's just you're changing control schemes on the fly physically to play this game.
And then games like Metroid Other M, the D-pad. Because that game had full 3D, like, you could move around, it hurt your hands to play that game. when you were holding the controller NES style. The edges of that D-pad were really kind of sharp, and they dug into your fingers. I'd probably put this at C.
That's what I did.
On the other hand, Wii Remote and Nunchuck,
Yes.
I think I would probably put A.
Yeah, sure.
I think for the most part, while it was missing buttons that a lot of other controllers had, it got used in really interesting ways, and having the two pieces separated, I found I enjoyed a lot because it let you sit in a more comfortable position if you wanted to, and you could have your hands apart. You didn't have to worry about keeping them together, and so you could just lounge on the couch.
And it was like the majority of your games on the Wii use that design with the nunchuck attachment on there.
Yeah. I love the Wii Remote and the nunchuck, and it set the course for Nintendo for the next couple of generations. Really, we still see, the DNA of the Wii Remote and nunchuck with the Switch right now and the Joy-Cons,
which we're getting closer to that right now.
So,
A rank's for I'll agree.
I think A rank is pretty good. Then you got the Pro Controller. Let's skip over the Pro Controller real quick, and let's do that and let's do the Classic Controller and the Classic Controller Pro together. Let's do Wii Remote stuck in a Mario Kart wheel. Where would you put this? C
or D. It's pretty close.
You could convince me either way. Like, the only reason that this is a thing is so that you can spam I'm using tilt controls in Mario Kart. Like, that's it. It doesn't really work very well as a steering device.
No, it doesn't.
It was not super precise, and if you tilted it too far, your car freaked out. It didn't know what to do. I'd probably put this at a D. Like, because it does not work very well as
I'm going to give it a C rank just because of the commercial in college that was playing in the hallway between areas, and I feel sorry for my good old former friend Neff, who had to work the art gallery that the TV was right outside of, that they constantly played this commercial on, but it was always playing the Mario Kart commercial, and the guy's like, "Get behind the wheel!" Driving down the road, get behind the wheel. Eating a hot dog, get behind the wheel. So we would see him and we're like, "Hey, get behind the wheel," and he'd just glare at us.
I tried this a couple of times in Mario Kart. I did not like it. It was not very good.
You pop that thing out of that thing, and then suddenly motorcycles can turn like on a dime.
Yeah.
It's great.
So, the Classic Controller, the first attempt at Nintendo bringing back a Super Nintendo style or modern style controller for the Wii.
2 analog sticks? Crazy talk, right?
The problem with it was the 2 analog sticks on this were really close together.
Yeah.
And you'd bump your thumbs together a lot playing things.
I didn't have that issue, but it was nice having it.
And the additional the what would become the triggers are in the middle of the top shoulder area. This was not a very well designed controller. They improved it pretty quickly.
There was also like this weird middle button on the top that controlled like a latch deal for 2 slots in the back. They
never used.
I want to know what that was for.
They never
were you supposed to put that like on a belt like your Captain N?
Like, they had to have had something in their mind they were going to use that for.
It was probably like an attachment for the actual Wiimote to be attached on there.
Probably.
Maybe a leftover from like a dev build originally and just never got implemented further.
Like, I think I would put this one in the D section just because it's not a very good design and they improved it very quickly.
I used mine a lot.
Oh, I used it a lot, but I
just didn't want to spend money on it.
I could probably be convinced to put this in C.
I put it in B. just because I actually did use mine a lot for some game. I forget what it was, but
And see, I would put
I think I use it a lot on Kirby.
I'd put the Classic Controller Pro in the B section. Because it did improve on the classic controller design. It spaced out the thumbsticks a little bit. It put the Z and the ZL and ZR buttons in a much better place. The triggers were not super great. Like they didn't have any movement at all. It was just a tiny little click was all it was. I mean, they were completely digital. They didn't have any analog to them at all. So it suffered some with other controllers of the era, with like the PS3 controller and the 360 controller, which had the analog functionality of their triggers. So I'd put this one at a B.
Okay. How do you feel about the whatever that thing is?
The balance board?
That thing, yes.
I love the balance board, but much like the Donkey Konga controllers, it's not a very good way to control games.
And I think some little girl over in like England had one or something, and the game told her she was fat. So they like tried to sue Nintendo for that.
There was some fun stuff. Like the Wii Fit stuff was really fun. Some of the games that you played where you were doing like the step dancing, exercise thing.
Very limited on use.
But yeah, it's not a very good controller. I'd put that in the D section.
Okay. The Wii U gamepad.
I have a love-hate relationship with this. The Wii U gamepad bought a Raving Rabbids game that I never wanted. It bought it on its own because there was some dust stuck under the screen protector. And I was freaked out. I thought the gamepad was possessed. But and because there was no refund policy, I now own a Rabbids game that I never played. I've not once launched that game.
You should go back and play that now. Rabbids are awesome.
Rabbids in that era were not awesome.
No, they weren't.
The gamepad itself, I liked. I think it definitely paved the way for what we are doing now with the Switch. It was bulky. It was a little too big.
It drained battery life like insanely fast.
The battery life was really bad on it. But I did like the sort of the two screen aspect of it with the asymmetrical gameplay, some of the things they were trying to do with that. I thought as far as the actual controls itself, it's really nice. It's just, it's not a very good, like a very comfortable
the
design.
implementation of it all together was not good.
Separately,
the ideas were great.
I'd probably put this at a C just because I think it got improved on later down the line.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's not a bad controller by any means, and it did set the stage for the Switch, which is an amazing system. I have a fondness for the Wii U controller, the Wii U gamepad, and the system itself. But as a controller, it's not a super great controller.
That's fair.
On the other hand, I think we are probably going to differ here as well. The Wii U Pro controller?
Yep.
My all-time favorite controller. Ever. I 100% love this controller. I love the weird placement of the analog sticks above the buttons. It seemed weird at first, but I got very used to it. That controller is super comfortable in my hands. I like the triggers. I like the bumpers. The battery life was unbelievable. That thing lasted weeks before I had to charge it. And I used a Pro controller all the time. I think like the DS Lite, this D-pad is the best D-pad that has ever been on a Nintendo controller. The DS Lite has the best D-pad ever, and they used that D-pad on the Wii U Pro controller. 100% my favorite controller of all time.
Still gonna make it a B rank.
A B? That is an S tier controller, my friend. I wish I could use that on the Switch. And I wish someone would just take that shell, put some Switch controller guts into it so I can use it, because I love the Wii U Pro controller.
Okay.
And I will fight anybody that says it's a bad controller, because it is not a bad controller.
So, tell me what you think about a single Joy-Con.
A single Joy-Con on its side, I do not like in any way, shape, or form. They are
So, C rank.
uncomfortable. I'm going to put it at a C. It's not a D, because it's not a terrible controller.
Right.
But it is not comfortable. I don't like the analog sticks on it as the primary mode of control. It really needed the D-pad. But I know why they didn't use a D-pad on it. But they're just too small. The buttons are too close together. The stick, because of where it is placed when you're using the Joy-Cons normally, are too
Depending
close
if you're holding the left or the right one.
to the buttons. It's not comfortable in any way at all.
One you could have like most of the controller on the left without anything. The other one, most of the controllers on the right without anything.
Yep.
It's like, okay.
Yeah, there was no real comfortable way. There's no real comfortable way to hold the Joy-Con on its side for extended periods of time.
How do you feel about two Joy-Cons together?
I really like two
a peripheral
Joy-Cons.
that comes with the game console.
I really like two Joy-Cons stuck together in that little dog controller. I would put the Joy-Cons in the A tier.
Okay. Yeah,
I think
yeah,
they're good. They're a little small, but overall, I really like the Joy-Cons.
The functionality is all there.
It is. It's got NFC. It's got gyro. It's got IR. Even if they don't use IR for anything outside of Labo.
Rip.
The Joy-Cons together are really good controllers. They're just the size of them more than anything else keeps them from being an S tier controller for me.
So how do you feel about the Switch Pro controller?
I don't actually own one myself. I have used one. I would put it right alongside the Wii U Pro controller. I think it is.
I use mine every chance I can.
I think it is
like
a fantastic controller. It's super comfortable.
Yes.
I really like the buttons. I really like the D-pad. I don't own one personally because they're so ridiculously expensive.
They're like what, $70?
They're $70, and that is a hard amount of money to put into a controller. I own a bunch of third-party Switch controllers, which are really nice, but I have used a proper Switch Pro controller, and I think it is an amazing controller to use. It's just expensive. It's the only negative thing I have to say about the Switch Pro controller. I'm surprised they don't have the regular DS. They have a 3DS here. Are we talking using a 3DS as a Smash controller or a 3DS as a whole?
I have no idea.
I really like the 3DS.
The control scheme in general on there is what they were going for.
I really like the 3DS. The circle pad's kind of nice. It's not the best way to control games. I'm not a huge fan of the D-pad of the original 3DS. I thought it was too clicky and too stiff. I'd probably put this one in maybe the B area.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The 3D
we probably shouldn't have actually had that one in the list, but here we are.
The 3D was kind of cool. It was a neat gimmick. The only game I ever thought it worked well at all in was Mario 3D Land. There were a couple of times they used that in clever ways, and it was really cool in Zelda. Link Between Worlds used the 3D really well.
But you don't control. I mean, you can control the 3D, but the controls is what we're looking at, Tony.
Yeah, I'm not a. I think the 3DS XL is a better version of the 3DS. I think the
Oh
buttons
yeah,
are
they
nicer.
definitely improved upon it after the fact.
Yeah, I'd put the 3DS in the B tier as far as
Like
controls go.
if we wanted to, we could talk about the dongle attachment on there or whatever it was.
Oh, the Circle Pad Pro?
That thing. Well, and then we talk about like the other ones, but we don't have them on the list, so probably like A or S tier after, depending which one you're talking about.
Yeah, I'd put the 3DS XL in A, but the original 3DS I think is a B tier controller.
Okay.
Mega
All right,
Drive.
No. Master System.
Yeah, the Master System. I have no experience at all with this controller.
It feels weird holding it. It's like holding an NES controller, but it almost feels like a knockoff if you've never actually played one.
Yeah.
And there's no start button or select on the controller. That's on the console.
Yeah.
So it's like you're not using an NES. You're like using an Atari almost.
I could not. I would have to defer to someone who's got experience with this because I have never used this controller.
I have never used it either.
Just looking at it, I'd say maybe.
I have held one. It really does feel weird.
A C. I think that D-pad looks really weird
Yeah.
and really clunky to use. So I'd probably put it in the C tier.
Yep.
Like I don't think it's as good as the NES controller, which is in B. For me. So C tier, I think, for that. Genesis controller, though, I really like. I think that is just as good as the NES controller. Both the 3-button and the 6-button versions. I think they're both they're the same controller essentially. Just one has extra buttons. I don't know that I like them as much as the Super Nintendo controller.
I still use my original Genesis controller, like the original controller.
Yeah.
And the functionality is still great. Occasionally you have to clean out that gunk that builds up after time around the edges in there, with buttons and stuff. But I mean, solid controller in my opinion. I don't know. I'm thinking B or A on there.
See, I'd probably put it in the B. I think it's as good as the NES controller. I don't think it's as good as the Super Nintendo controller. So I think I'd put both the Genesis controllers in B.
No. We're not. There's only one Genesis controller.
Oh, is the other one Saturn controller?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say the Saturn controller probably falls in the A rank.
Really?
So this is a 6-button controller with shoulder buttons.
Okay.
So essentially, like Street Fighter on the Genesis was able to hold up, or the Street Fighter on Saturn was able to hold up against like Street Fighter on PlayStation or Super Nintendo because of that. Mortal Kombat, same thing. You had the additional buttons, shoulder buttons. Of course, the Saturn as a console was garbage, but that controller for fighting game community people was phenomenal.
Okay. So
and we don't even have the actual 6-button controller for the Genesis on here because I think that was Japan only, unless you had like the turbo controller over here. That's the only way you got the 6 buttons on Genesis controller here. So I'm going to put this at A rank.
Okay, I can see that. That makes sense based on what you've said. The Dreamcast. What do you think of the Dreamcast?
Rank. Every day, S rank.
See, I'd probably put this one at A just because I don't have a ton of experience with it. I do really like the analog stick. I think the actual buttons themselves are really good. The controller itself is super clunky.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it didn't feel completely balanced in your hands, so I'd probably put it at A.
If you didn't have the visual memory unit in there, you just had regular memory cards, I would say it'd probably be further down the list. But because you have that visual memory unit in there, that adds like you know how we have the Wii U in the 3DS with the split screen stuff going on there. This was doing that before those were a thing. Okay. And sure, it was a crappy little LCD screen.
Yeah.
But I mean, like you're playing Resident Evil and you don't want to pause the game to check your life to see what it is. You just look down at the controller and it's like, if you have enough lights, like, oh, I'm in danger or caution or fine.
It's one of the early forms of the two screen asymmetrical stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I think though I would give it an A just because of the size and the clunkiness of it. I think that holds it back just a little bit for me.
I think they could have done better with the cable.
Yeah.
The cable. Like all they had to do was extend that back part out just like another half an inch and run the cable for from the controller to console part through that part and just run the insides differently, and I mean it would be better, but they didn't do that. But we did. I think this is like the first time we actually had triggers instead of just like L2 R2.
Yeah,
this was actual triggers, and it worked.
Okay.
But I mean, you look at it and it does look weird just looking at it. It's like a weird spaceship rocket thing.
Yeah, it is. So I never owned a Dreamcast. I would only ever play one at a friend's house. So I don't have a lot of nostalgia that a lot of people have for the system.
It was all right.
So that's why.
It was way ahead of its time, but also didn't have protection, so people could easily copy and download and burn their own CDs of the games. So that was a major issue, and they fixed it like way too late in the lifespan of the thing.
Yeah.
But the console itself was also the first one to have like that just came with internet built into it already.
Yeah.
Like you just plug in your phone cable, dial-up modem goes, and you're good to go.
Okay.
And there was Ethernet adapters for it. I have one. Those things are expensive. I can't figure out how to make it work because it was Japan only, but apparently a lot of the services are still working to this day. I say a lot. Some of the services are still working if you know what you're doing.
All right, let's see if we can get through the Xbox and the PlayStation. That may be where we would end it.
Yeah, sounds good.
What do you think about the original Duke controller?
Yeah. I'll put it at B. I think
I put it at C.
It was a big clunky controller, but it was like it was Microsoft's first console
attempt at a controller.
And it's like, here's our controller. You covered the 6 buttons. You had 2 analog sticks. They looked at what PlayStation did with their controller and said, we can do this too.
It just had 2 triggers on the back. It didn't have bumpers, right?
No, because it had the white and black.
Yeah.
Which that eventually got... There's some later controllers, smaller versions of that had the white and black as your L1, R1. And then that eventually became just LB and RB.
Yeah.
In future renditions of the console, such as the 360 and further.
So I think this is a C tier controller for me. The clunkiness of it again drops it down a little bit, because it's not a super comfortable controller to hold.
It was all right, and people were. I like the idea that people were able to take it apart. You could pop that cover off of where it says Xbox because it's advertising itself on the controller in big bold letters there with the logo of the console. And you can put your own little picture in there. Or there was a thing called Yoshi Mod that I heard of from G4 TV or Tech TV at the time, I think. Attack of the Show. And the guy put a remote start for his console in the controller itself. So it was like a hardwire auto power up the console. It was cool.
The 360 controller.
Wireless. It functioned. It had batteries. It ate through a lot of batteries.
It did. At the time, I thought this was an amazing controller. It got better. I think the Xbox One is a better version of this controller.
This is. I'm going to save that comment for when we get the PlayStation.
Okay.
I'm going to say B rank as well.
I'm going to put this one at B. I would put this one at B. This is a very... Like, the 360 controller is one of the first modern controllers that I really, really liked.
It had the built-in power up the console, power down the console.
It was comfortable.
It didn't have to have memory card slots like the Duke controller did.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all on the console. Yeah, it felt great to use.
Yep. And then you've got the Xbox One controller that I would put in an A rank. I think Microsoft
basically the current.
I think Microsoft has gotten better every generation. Their controller has improved somewhat. It's been virtually the same. Like, it's not changing. They're not changing the internals. There's no gyro. There's not a lot of the stuff that you would find on like the PlayStation controller. But every generation, that controller gets better.
You see the evolution of it each time, and it's just like better and better. And while that one right there is the last Xbox controller in this list, physical controller, there is another Xbox One controller rendition after this one, where they got rid of the clear coat stuff up top and redid the LB and RB, and made those better because apparently they're garbage on those that had that plastic top part, like the
I think the D-pad on the Xbox One controller is way better than the 360's controller. That circle D-pad they had on that was garbage, but the Xbox One controller was better. I think the Series X controller is better than the Xbox One controller.
Yes.
The D-pad is better. It's more comfortable. I like the triggers a lot better. I like the sort of, the tactile feel that they've got, the bumpiness on the triggers. Every generation, Xbox's controller gets just a little bit better and a little bit better.
Yep.
Kinect, on the other hand, that's right down there with the balance board. It is a piece of garbage. Like, it has some cool functionality, and people are using it in weird and innovative ways, just not for games.
Yeah, in fact, there was the Steel Battalion game series had its own Kinect game. It's unplayable because it's completely Kinect. Yeah. Well, almost completely Kinect. But you have to have a Kinect to play it.
Yeah.
And then there was Kinect 2.0, and Microsoft even phased that out where they weren't even selling with the consoles anymore. Ugh, garbage.
And see, then
how do you feel about the original PlayStation controller?
This is another instance where their controllers get better and better every generation. I think I would put the original PlayStation controller at a C. Like, it got better even in its own generation. It got better when they added the analog sticks.
Yep, because it was just plain, boring, ordinary. So yeah, C.
I didn't think it was super comfortable. It improved once they started rounding the corners with the PlayStation 2 controller, which I would put the PlayStation 2 controller in a B.
I think it really actually improved when they added the analog, the DualShock stuff to it.
Yeah.
So the first one's just PlayStation controller. Then there was DualShock, which we don't have on here.
Mm-hmm.
That added a weight and rumble to the controller and analog sticks.
Yeah.
And then you see the PlayStation 2 version of that, which, yeah, I'm gonna put that at B rank.
Yeah, I would put both the PlayStation 2 and the PlayStation 3 controllers at a B.
Agreed.
The PlayStation 3 controller, I think, is actually, I felt stepped back just a little bit. The feel of the controller is not as good. It felt less substantial in my hands than the PlayStation 2
a little more
controller.
Fragile, I guess.
I don't think the triggers felt the triggers were the most uncomfortable triggers I've ever used.
Yeah, because they cut off like the siding or something on there, so they were more exposed, easier to bump.
Yeah.
And originally, when the console came out, there was like a lawsuit or something happening, so you didn't have a DualShock 3. You just had PlayStation 3 controller.
Yeah.
So there was no rumble in there at all, and so you're holding this controller and like, is it going to float away at any second? What's going on?
Yeah.
And it's got six axis built into it, so it's got motion control. And once they got the DualShock 3 stuff built in there, so you had the actual weight, it felt a lot better.
It felt better, yeah.
But still, it is... The battery life on there was a little longer than you'd expect with like a 360 controller, and it was rechargeable.
But PlayStation 4 controller, I'm putting right up there in A rank. I think that is an excellent controller. I love the touchpad. I love the feel. They've completely rounded off every aspect of this controller, and it feels really comfortable in your hands. It felt... What?
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say it feels substantial. It's got some heft to it. The
I
triggers
still use one today, yeah.
super improved over the PS3 controllers. I really like the triggers of the PS4 controller. I wish there was a PS5 controller on here because I'd put that right up in the S rank. I think
yes,
the PS5 controller is one of the best controllers I have ever used. I would put that one right alongside the Wii U Pro controller for me. Those are the two best controllers. I love the DualSense controller.
Yeah, it's a really good controller. I wish it was on here. Would have gone through and made our own list and got rid of a bunch of the crap that's actually listed down below, but not going to bore y'all with that view.
But the PS4 controller, I think, is an A-tier controller because it was better than the PS3 controller, but it has been improved since the PS5 has come out. I love the PS4 controller, with the exception of the battery life. I think the battery life is awful in it.
If you get the paddle attachments, like the first party paddle attachment you can slot into this thing, that controller gets so much better because then you add more functionality just with that attachment.
Yeah.
Without having to actually modify a controller at all. So yeah.
I think I think the PS4 controller is A tier all the way, and then I'm going to use the Steam controller as a PS5 controller just so we have something up there.
I was going to ask you to actually rank the Steam controller.
I've never used one. I have no.
I'll let you hold the one I had.
Yeah, but I've never actually used it to play a game.
You don't need to play a game with it.
So it's not a good controller.
No.
So it's going to be my stand-in.
It's kind of neat though. Like it plays like note music whenever you power it up, and when you power it down, and you can go and customize that through Steam directly. So like mine, I would turn it on, and you would hear the jingle for "This is a Triumph."
Nice. I'm just going to use the Steam controller as my stand-in for the DualSense. That's going to be my S-tier controller. So
no, I'm putting it on my list. It's going D rank.
Then I think the last controller we look at is the Move controller.
I actually have two of these.
I really like the ones that I don't own any, but I've used some, and I really like them. I think they're really comfortable.
For what they were needed for, they were easy to use. They functioned. I don't like the little bulbs on the end. It makes sense while they're there.
Yeah.
And I had a few games where you didn't actually have to use a VR helmet for them.
Nice.
Like there's actually a Portal expansion DLC thing or something that uses these controllers, and it was neat because you could have the orb lighting up orange or blue depending which portal you shot out, and there was also the nunchuck part of that as well. I'll put it at C rank.
I was going to say I might put it at a B.
It very limited capacity for what it could be used for.
Okay.
Okay, B rank, yeah, because it like that 1-to-1 motion was pretty almost 1-to-1.
All right, I'm just going to toss one more out here: mouse and keyboard. I think we need to.
That's right.
That is an S rank controller. Mouse and keyboard is an amazing way to play games.
What about the Guitar Hero controller?
I'd probably put that one A.
A rank.
Just because it's super fun to play Guitar Hero, and when you get into the rhythm of some of those songs, it feels really nice. I really like the Guitar Hero and the Rock Band controllers.
And there's a lot more on this list that we're not going to bother with because reasons.
But
you know what? For my S rank, I'm going to put that Boomerang controller for the PS5.
For the PS5 controller, okay.
Yeah, I'm putting that up there.
Okay, that'll be your DualSense controller. I've got the Steam controller as the DualSense controller. Just real quick, you can see S tier for me: GameCube, Wii U Pro controller, Switch Pro controller, DualSense, and mouse and keyboard. Those are by far the best ways, I think, to control video games. So,
DualSense, mouse and keyboard, or a GameCube, or I mean, not a GameCube. I don't have the GameCube at my S rank. The Switch Pro controller.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna save this and I'll post this to Twitter as well so that people can see it, and we can tag each other and link them together so people can see our lists together.
We might need to go and edit in PS5 controller, though.
Yeah, I'll find a way to put a PS5 controller over the Steam controller.
Okay.
But yeah, that was really fun to do. I really liked that. That was some interesting discussion about the history of controllers.
Yeah, I didn't think we'd get an hour out of this, but here we are.
So, I would love to do more stuff like this. If there's anything anybody wants to see us rank in any way, let us know, because I think I would like to do this again. I don't know about you.
Oh, yeah.
This was super fun to do. I've seen these lists all over the place. I've never done a list like this. This is the first time I've done something like this. And I think we've come up with a pretty good, mostly similar, with a couple of exceptions, list of controllers.
Agreed.
So that will be it for the show this week. This was a fun episode to do. I really liked this. So yeah, let us know down in the comments on Twitter, whatever, what your favorite controllers are. I'd love to hear you guys' reasoning behind some of the controllers that you like and don't like. But that will be the episode this week.
Do your tier list based on how well you play Bullet Witch with the controllers.
So thank you very much, Ethan, for being here.
Thank you for letting me do a tier list.